Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about climate. Climate fraud is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year business, and children are the primary targets of climate alarmists. Newsweek reports that rising numbers of children and young adults are suffering clinical depression and being treated with psychiatric drugs because of their fears about climate. A young couple in Argentina shot their baby in order to protect her from global warming. Let's take a look now at who's targeting our children with global warming fears. In 1989, a senior environmental official at the United Nations said entire nations could be wiped off the face of the earth by rising sea levels if global warming is not reversed by the year 2000. Coastal flooding and crop failures would create an exodus of eco-refugees, threatening political chaos. Governments have a 10-year window of opportunity to solve the greenhouse effect before it goes beyond human control. 1 year earlier, in 1988, The Guardian and Canberra Times said, governments must yield national sovereignty to multilateral authorities able to enforce laws across environmentally invisible frontiers if the greenhouse effect, which threatens the future of whole nations, is to be overcome, the Commonwealth Secretary General said on Tuesday. Authorities also predicted that the Maldives would be completely underwater within 30 years, which would have been 2 years ago, and that they would run out of drinking water by the year 1992. Organizations like the United Nations have been lying to people and trying to frighten children for decades now. And the United Nations is now training school teachers to continue promoting climate fear in the public schools. The United Nations has been very successful in their efforts to frighten children and are now using a child as their climate fear spokesperson. And this effort to indoctrinate and frighten children has been going on for decades.
How many years until the world ends again? We have 12 years left to cut emissions.
Reality is that children around the world now have longer, safer, better lives than they've ever had at any time in human history. I'm going to show you a series of graphs from Oxford University's Our World in Data website. Death rates from natural disasters have plummeted over the last century. They're down more than 95% from 100 years ago. Death rates from air pollution have also plummeted over the last 30 years around the world. Similarly, child mortality around the world has plummeted over the last 70 years. Crop yields around the world have skyrocketed over the last 60 years. Almost every year, crop yields set a new record. Over the last 200 years, life expectancy around the world has skyrocketed to record levels. And one other thing which has skyrocketed is CO2 emissions, and this is not a coincidence. CO2 emissions correlate closely with productivity and energy availability. Having low-cost available energy is good for everybody on the planet. Irrational climate fears have caused German electricity prices to skyrocket. Germany now has the highest power prices in Europe, and climate alarmists like Vox simply lie about it. Yesterday they printed an article titled, "How Germany Helped Make Renewable Energy Cheap for the Rest of the World." It's straight out of Orwell's 1984. War is peace, ignorance is strength, expensive is cheap. Barack Obama was quite open about his plans to make electricity prices skyrocket.
Under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases, coal-powered plants, natural gas, you name whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that money on to consumers.
Sorry, Mr. President, but high electricity prices and fear hurt children, and they are being driven by an irrational superstition about carbon dioxide. I'm seeing a lot of messages like this on YouTube and Twitter. Here's a few of those comments. Someone posted the best solution in an earlier video of Tony's. Instead of sending kids to psychologists, give them a subscription to Tony Heller. I'm preparing for when my kids are a little older by downloading and safely storing all the information Tony has brought forward. My kid may not be popular for knowing the truth, but at least he won't end up like that 8-year-old kid that committed suicide because of these monsters. I'm doing the same thing for my grandchildren, plus sending links to their parents. The best way to protect children from climate fears is to make sure that they have accurate information. If children were exposed to accurate information about energy, carbon dioxide, and climate, we wouldn't be seeing this epidemic of depressed children. The best way to protect children from climate depression is prevention rather than treatment after the fact. I'm not a psychologist and I'm not qualified to help clinically depressed children. But what I can help with is making sure that children and adults have accurate information about climate to work with. I worked as a school teacher for a number of years and I love having the opportunity to educate children. Climate education is now my full-time occupation and I'm looking at ways to offer services to help protect children from climate fearmongers. I feel like that's the most valuable thing I could do with my climate efforts. Climate alarmists like the founder of the Extinction Rebellion are quite open with their plans to overthrow everything good and decent in our society. For the sake of our children and everybody else, it's quite important that these people are stopped. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science and propaganda for a long time.